we will stand, and we will fight, and we will unite, and we will repeal Obamacare.
Recognize the voice. That's Michelle Bachmann before a group of protesters against the Affordable Care Act under consideration this week, as you know, by the Supreme Court. Paul Lindman, Scott Lynn with you on the Morning Update. Can the government force people to buy health insurance? That was a primary question before the court yesterday. As for the Republicans, one suspects this morning they might be a bit buoyed by the questions posed by the justices. Let's find out. Joining us, a Republican leader, Senator Mike Lee from Utah. What do you think, Mike?
You know, I think the Supreme Court is likely, based on the comments that were made yesterday and the body language, facial expressions, and intonation of the justices, to conclude that the individual mandate is unconstitutional. I think there are 5 votes for that conclusion.
There are court watchers, as you know, who point out there's a reason they don't vote until June, and plenty of history to suggest that while they might have a conversation in one direction before the court, sometimes the vote goes the other way.
Yeah, sometimes that happens, and that's why I'm always reluctant to make predictions about the Supreme Court. I could be wrong in the assessment I just provided. Nevertheless, I saw yesterday an unusual sense that there's a lot of skepticism on the court. And the justices actually will vote this coming Friday. It's just that the rest of us won't know the results of that vote until June when they issue their opinion.
Mm-hmm.
One of the big issues, of course, must the entire law's 450 or so provisions be scrapped if the individual mandate is found unconstitutional? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's the so-called separability argument, and that part will be argued today in front of the court. I'll be watching that aspect of the argument just as I watched the individual mandate discussion yesterday. I'll be able to answer that question better after today's argument, but I can tell you my thoughts on it, having reviewed the briefing on this question, lead me to the conclusion that it's not severable. And if the individual mandate can't stand, the rest of the law ought not be able to stand either, because the law can't function effectively independent of the severability, of the individual mandate.
There are Democrats, including Schumer of New York, who are saying, hey, you know, the Republicans were the fathers of the individual mandate going back to 1993. What's your reaction to that?
Look, the fact that some Republicans have made mistakes in the past on that front hardly makes this constitutional. It hardly makes it a good idea at the national level. I have never been one of those Republicans that have in the past thought an individual mandate was a good idea. Again, the fact that some Republicans made that mistake doesn't negate the fact that it is still a mistake.
What happens if the court strikes down the mandate portion of all of this and keeps the larger package? Where do we go from there?
You know, it depends on which parts they strike down and which parts they leave intact. But I think regardless, if parts of the law are left intact, Congress would need to reopen the issue and invalidate much of it, repeal much or all of it, because the individual mandate really is the keystone of the whole plan. The whole thing sort of falls out of balance if you take the individual mandate out.
There are those in our audience, senators, you well know, who would shudder at the words you just said. Congress would have to go back and deal with the whole thing again. I mean, how would that go?
Well, it would certainly be contentious, and it would be not a pleasant thing for Congress to go through. Sometimes we have to do things that are unpleasant. But again, it's not my sense that the rest of the law can stand if the individual mandate fails. Just as a matter of simple economics, I don't think it works. And so I think we'd have to do that. I hope that that doesn't become necessary, because I hope and somewhat expect that the Supreme Court will find the mandate unconstitutional and will find that it's not severable. There's no severability clause, and there's not much indication from my perspective that the law could operate effectively and independently of the individual mandate.
Senator Mike Lee, Republican from Utah, thanks for talking to us in Portland again this morning.
Thank you very much.